want you to think about the word commitment and what that means. And then I'm going to talk to you about another word that has a very similar, it's in the same little ballpark of words and their definitions. And they kind of cause us to do the same type of things. But it's a different word and it means something else. And that word is devotion. Devotion. Commitment and devotion are very similar. They'll cause you to do the similar things. You know, if a man commits himself to be married to this woman, only to her, he will stay with her, he'll be faithful to her, he'll take care of her in sickness and in health, richer for poor, all of those great things that we commit to on marriage. But if that same man is devoted to that woman, commitment or no commitment, if he's devoted to her, he's going to be there with her, he'll never leave her or forsake her. She's the only woman for him, am I right? Can you see how commitment and devotion have similar outcomes? It's a time of yourself. It's a dedication of yourself to someone else or to something else. You know, I looked up the two definitions, and the definition for the word commitment is this. It really means a sending. It's a sending. It's a putting into the hands or the power of another. It's a putting out into something else. Taking something and putting it into the power and hands of someone else. It means to join or to put together. It means to pledge. It means to make a declaration, of which means to bind together. To make a declaration of which means to bind together. Maybe you're at one point on a football team or a sport team and you heard your coach ream everybody out, and one of his things he was saying is, you guys aren't committed enough to win. Some guy shows up late to practice and the coach pulls him aside and he begins to deal with him about his commitment. Am I right? Are you committed? Are you committed to this team or not? I want to know. Are you committed? What is he saying? Give me a public declaration. I want to hear from you. Are you committed? Are you giving yourself into the power of another? You know, when you if you plan to head off to the military, before you head off to the military to serve for the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, you have to sign a letter of commitment, committing yourself for the next X amount of years. You're surrendering, you're giving yourself, you're into the hands of another. This is a necessary stage for us in Jesus Christ. We have to commit ourselves to Him. There has to be a point in our life where we nail down our life and say, God, I'm now giving this to you. I am not going to live my own life and do my own thing. I give myself into your hands. But I want you to understand the difference between commitment and devotion here tonight. So I want to talk about going from commitment to devotion. Going from commitment to devotion. Commitment has more in it, a forcing into the hands of another, a pushing. You can kind of hear this in the definition of commitment here. A sending out into the hands of another, into the power of another. A declaration that you say outwardly that binds you to someone else. A pledge. Can you see there in commitment that there is like, you're literally doing something you don't know if you're going to be able to do or not. So you're making a commitment. I remember one time a guy told me this. He said, you know, Sam, isn't it interesting that we say commitments only to things that are difficult? You never commit to anything that's easy. He said, have you ever noticed this? When you were a little kid and you were going to Disney World, your parents didn't make you sign a letter of commitment before you went to make sure you were going to actually go and follow through with Disney World. But yet when we get married, we make a commitment. We sign a legal document saying that I'm joining myself. I'm committing to this thing. He said we commit to things that aren't easy. We commit to things that are going to be difficult at times. And I'm telling you, you in your Christian life must pass through commitment to begin a relationship with God. There's going to be a point where you nail it down and you say, come blank or high water, I am going to go through this with my Jesus. I'm committed to you, God. I may fail. I may mess up. I may struggle. I may totally wreck at one point. But I'm going to get back up. And I'm committed to this. I'm dedicated. I'm going to do this. I remember about in the mid-90s, God started moving in different places around the world. And one of the things that God was doing around the world in these different places was he was drawing people's hearts in a very special way. And there was a series of revivals that began taking place, started I think somewhere like in England. God began moving in some series of churches in England in the mid-90s, and people started getting hungry and passionate for God. People started expressing a love and desire for God. We were doing the work, you know. We were spreading the gospel. We had missions programs. We were giving to the church. We were doing the things we needed to do. But there was this hunger inside of people to really know Him in a new way. And that revival was going on in England. It ended up spreading to a place in Canada, Toronto, Canada. You may have heard of the Toronto Revival in the 90s. Into the early part of 2000. And in that revival there was a lot of worship and there was a lot of preaching about coming back to the Father's heart. Understanding the love of God. Finding God and falling in love with Him. There's a lot of preaching going on about not seeking the giving, the blessing, but seeking the giver and the blesser. I remember that theme being said over and over again. That we've been seeking all the blessings, but not seeking the blesser. Seeking the givings, but not the giver. And God was drawing us and taking us as a church to a deeper place in Him. In that time in the 90s, there was the Vineyard Church sprung up with all this new music that went on. I love that old Vineyard music from the 90s. It's still some of my favorite worship music out there. Because it was the first time in a long time the church began to sing to Jesus. Not about Jesus, but these songs were intimate. You know, this is the air I breathe. This is the air I breathe. And I'm desperate for you. That was out of the Vineyard movement. That's one of those. I think I can name off 100 songs to you right now. You know, I've heard of that. 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 Oh, I love that song. That's awesome. Todd sang that other one, I Need You More. You know, those were all songs that were coming out of those revivals and of intimacy there in the 90s. And there was the Brownsville revival, where my life personally got deeply changed there. And at that revival, there was worship that was going on I've never seen before. I watched these videos of these people, and the thing that got to me and just rested my heart was I saw people that loved God way more than I loved God, and I wanted what they had. My commitments I'd made to God, I'd broken 100 times and rebroken them and remade them. And these people were having something between them and Jesus that I wanted to have. I wanted to know where they got it and how they got that kind of love. And God was taking the church from just commitment to devotion. And I really feel like He's doing that again. All over. Different places, churches, and movements. There's a message coming out, beginning to come out to this generation of intimacy, of radical love and devotion to Christ. Not just all this little Christian lip service, but a real something deep happening inside the heart. And I see this generation with such a passion in them to really know God and hear. You know, a song that's coming out of Hillsongs, you know, a song that so many people love today, Inside Out. From the inside out. Lord, my heart cries out. Trust me, there's nothing special about the chord progression in that song. It's been repeated 10 million times. You can sing like 50 different songs with the same chord progression. It's the wording. It's the words, the message. I've got a cry in me that I would be changed from the inside out. And that is God calling us from simply committing to Him, committing to follow Him, into this new level of devotion. Let me read the definition of devotion. There's another level. Everybody say another level.
Like 101.5.
This is where God's taking us. Devotion. The definition of devotion is this: to give up. See, it sounds real simple and like it's the same thing as commitment. First one is to put into the hands of another. The second one is to give up. And you're going to start noticing at the very beginning there's something a little different about it. The first is commitment, is to put into the hands of another. The first part of devotion is to give up into. Can you see a little bit of a difference? One, you're doing something that you might not totally completely want to do yet, but you know you should. You're forcing yourself into it. The next one, devotion, is a giving up into. It means to resign or to give up wholly into. It literally means to be addicted to.